Hello everyone. So for this video, I'm going to go a little bit over what Samhain is, spelled Samhain, sometimes said as Samhain, but there's a lot of controversy on the actual pronunciation of it. Anyway, Samhain, All Hallows Eve, Halloween, the most magical night of the year. It is exactly opposite Beltane on the wheel of the year. Halloween is Beltane's dark twin, a night of glowing jack-o'-lanterns, bobbing for apples, tricks or treats, dressing in costumes, a night of ghost stories and seances, tarot cards, and scrying with mirrors, a night of power, when the veil that separates our world from the other world is at its thinnest. It is a night for the spirits. All Hallows Eve is the eve before All Hallows Day on November 1st. And for once, even popular tradition remembers that the eve is more important than the day itself. The traditional celebration focusing October 31st, beginning at sundown. It also the festival for the Celtic New Year. Not that the holiday was Celtic only, though. Many ancient and unconnected cultures, such as Egyptians and pre Spanish Mexicans, also celebrated this as a festival of the dead, but the majority of our modern traditions can be traced to the British Isles. The Celts called it Samhain, which means summer's end. According to their ancient twofold division of the year, when summer ran from Beltane to Samhain and winter ran from Samhain to Beltane. Some modern coverns echo this structure by letting the high priest rule the coven from Samhain, and rulership is then returned to the high priestess at Beltane. According to the later fourfold division of the year, Samhain is seen as autumn's end and the beginning of winter. Samhain, depending on where you're from, is pronounced as Samhain in Ireland, Samhain in Wales, Samhain in Scotland, and sometimes Samhain in the US, where not many speak Gaelic. So, however you say it, it's all still the same. Not only is Samhain the end of autumn, it is also more importantly the end of the old year and the beginning of the new. Celtic New Year's Eve, when the new year begins with the onset of the dark phase of the year, just as the new day begins at sundown. There are many representations of Celtic gods with two faces, and it must have been one of them that held sway over Samhain. Like his Greek counterpart, Janus, he would straddle the threshold, one face turned toward the past in commemoration of those who died during the last year, and one face gazing hopefully toward the future, mystic eyes attempting to pierce the veil and divine what the new coming year holds. These two themes, celebrating the dead and divining the future, are intertwined in Samhain, as they are likely to be in any New Year celebration. As a feast of the dead, it was believed the dead could, if they wished, return to the land of the living for this one night to celebrate with their family, tribe, or clan. And so the great burial mounds of Ireland were opened up with lighted torches lining the walls so the dead could find their way. Extra places were set at the table and food set out for any who had died that year. There are many stories that tell of Irish heroes making raids on the underworld while the gates of Fairy stood open, though all must return to their appointed places by cockcrow. As a feast of divination, this was the night par excellence for peering into the future. The reason for this has to do with the Celtic view of time. In a culture that uses linear concept of time like our modern one, New Year's Eve is simply a milestone on the very long road that stretches in a straight line from birth to death. Thus, the New Year festival is a part of time. The ancient Celtic view of time, however, is cyclical, and its framework is New Year's Eve represents a point outside of time when the natural order of the universe dissolves back into primordial chaos, preparatory to reestablishing itself in a new order. Thus, Samhain is a night that exists outside of time, and hence it may be used to view any other point in time. At no other holiday is the tarot card reading, crystal reading, or tea leaf reading so likely to succeed. The Christian religion, with its emphasis on the historical Christ and his acts of redemption 2,000 years ago, is forced into a linear view of time, where seeing the future is an illogical proposition. In fact, from the Christian perspective, any attempt to do so is seen as inherently evil. This did not keep the medieval church from co-opting Samhain's other motive, commemoration of the dead. To the church, however, it could never be a feast for all of the dead, but only the blessed dead, all those hallowed, made holy by obedience to God. Thus, All Hallows or Hallow Mass, later All Saints and All Souls. There are so many types of divination that are traditional to Hallowstide, it is possible to mention only a few. Girls were told to place hazelnuts along the front of the fire grate, each one to symbolize one of her suitors. She could then divine her future husband by chanting, "If you love me, pop and fly. If you hate me, burn and die." Several methods used apples that made it the most popular Halloween fruit. Slice the apple at its equator to reveal the 5-point star within. Then eat it by candle night in front of the mirror. Your future spouse will then appear over your shoulder. Or you can peel an apple, making sure the peeling comes off in one long strand, reciting, "I pare this apple round and round, again my sweetheart's name to flourish on the I, I can't even read my own writing on the plane. I fling the unbroken paring over my head, my sweetheart's letter on the ground I read." Another apple divination is to take the apple and twist the stem, saying the alphabet as you go. Whichever letter you say when it breaks off is what your sweetheart's name begins with. Snails were also used. You can let a snail crawl through ashes overnight in your hearth. The considerate little creature will then spell out the initial letters of your soulmates as it moves. Perhaps the most famous icon of the holiday is the jack-o'-lantern. Various authorities attribute it to either Scottish or Irish origins. However, it seems clear that it was used as a lantern by people who traveled the road at night. The scary face was thought to frighten away spirits or fairies who might otherwise lead one astray. Set on porches and in windows, they cast the same spell of protection over the household. Bobbing for apples may well represent the remnants of a pagan baptism rite called seining. The water-filled tubs is a latter-day cauldron of regeneration, into which the novice's head is immersed. The fact that the participant in this folk game was usually blindfolded with hands tied behind their back also put one in mind of the traditional craft initiation ceremony. The custom of dressing in costumes and trick-or-treating is a Celtic origin, with survivals particularly strong in Scotland. There are some important differences from the modern version. In the first place, the custom was not relegated to children, but was actively indulged in by adults as well. The treat, which was required, was often one of spirits, the liquid kind. This has been revived as college students go trick or drinking In ancient times, the bands would sing seasonal carols from house to house, making the tradition very similar to Yuletide while selling. In fact, the custom known as caroling, now connected exclusively with midwinter, was once practiced at all major holidays. In Scotland, the tradition of dressing in costume consisted mostly of cross dressing, men dressed as women, and vice versa. Ancient societies provided an opportunity for people to try on the role of the opposite gender for one night of the year, although in Scotland this is less dramatic but more confusing, since men were in the habit of wearing skirt like kilts anyway. To witches, Halloween is one of the four high holidays or greater Sabbaths of cross quarter days. Because it is the most important holiday of the year, it is sometimes called the Great Sabbath. It is an ironic fact that the newer self created covens tend to use the older names of the holidays, Samhain, which they discovered through modern research, while the older hereditary and traditional coven often use the newer name, Halloween, which has been handed down through oral tradition within the covens. With such an important holiday, witches often hold two distinct celebrations. First, a large Halloween party for non craft friends, and second, a coven ritual held on Halloween night itself. If the rituals are done right, there is often a feeling of invisible friends taking part in the rite. Another date which may be utilized in planning celebrations is the actual cross quarter day for Old Halloween or Halloween Old Style. This occurs when the sun has reached 15 degrees Scorpio, an astrological power point symbolized by the eagle. This year, 2023, this will happen November 7th and 8th, depending on your time zone. This date was also appropriated by the church as a holiday of Martinmas. Blessed be.